Hey everybody, it's Meredith Miller here from Inner Integration. Happy holidays! I would love to give you today some tips for surviving the holidays with narcissists. Just looking at my YouTube stats recently in the last week or two, the stats are going like this. What does that mean? I think it's the holidays. I think people are really stressing right now with the narcissist in their lives, either because they're getting hoovered by someone from the past, or they're going into some kind of family situation where there's going to be toxic people somewhere on that narcissist spectrum, and everybody's getting stressed, right? Like the number one video right now on my channel is, dealing with toxic people, the 5 ways, the last live video that I did. So I thought, well, let me get on Facebook live video today. Let me give you some tips for surviving the holidays with narcissists. And I'm also going to, at the end, if you stick around, I'm going to ask a little trivia question about narcissists and the holidays. If you get the answer right, I'm going to give away one of my personal email supports. That's where you get to send me a question and some background information, and I write you back within 48 hours with a comprehensive email answer to your question, and that's a $57 value. I'm going to give this away that you can cash in for free in 2017. I'm going to give one of those away to the first person who answers that question, but I'm going to put that towards the end of our little broadcast today. Feel free to type in any comments and questions that you have along the ways. I know this is just a really stressful time of year for people who have narcissists in their life, and whether these were people, like I said, from the past, or you have to deal with them right now. So my first tip to you is opt out when you can. Just opt out. When you get all the spam email, all those emails that you don't really want, you can hit unsubscribe, opt out from that stuff if you don't have to deal with it. I realize a lot of you have to deal with some situations. It's not one solution applies to all. If you're sharing a child with a narcissist, you really have to deal with this. You have to create some form of communication that works for you and your kids. Some of you feel very similar ways about your own families. You feel like there's just too much guilt, or there's too many other reasons not to cut off entirely, so you're struggling with that. But if you're in a situation like this was an ex, or this was a boss or a coworker from the past, or a neighbor or an old friend, just opt out. You're just going to save yourself so much time and energy and emotional investment if you just hit unsubscribe. So if you do have to deal with the situation, rule number one is always breathe. Just breathe before you react, because you know how it is with the narcissist. They just poke you so that you react. And as soon as you react, they win. They win as soon as you react, no matter if you get really happy or really upset. Because, even if you get really happy, maybe to one of their flatterings or something like this, all they're doing is getting you to soften so that you transfer your approval to them. And then right after that, they're going to hit you with something really overt or something really covert, right? So the first suggestion, if you have to deal with it, is just breathe. And then ask yourself, what do you really want? What do you really want? In life, in general, in this very moment, what do you really want? What's really valuable to you? What really matters to you? Is it peace? Is that one of your main values? Something that you really, really value in life that's really important to you? Protect your peace then, and say no to anything that's gonna get in the way of you and that peace. And that might mean that you just don't respond to that thing that they do. Even if it upsets you, you just breathe in the moment and kind of play dumb. And then later, when you get back to your house, you deal and process that emotion that's built up. Maybe in the moment you use one of those disarming suggestions that I gave you in the last live video that I did. When you're dealing with narcissists, things like, that are deflective, but they're not self-defensive. So, when the person attacks you, or, throws these accusations towards you, or does things to bait you into the argument, and you don't want to get involved in that. These are ways of kind of tai chiing that information away. It's not going to solve the problem. It's not a long-term solution. It's just a solution to set yourself off the hook in the moment, to maintain your peace and to not respond, to not react to that, to not get hooked into the drama fest that they're trying to get you into. And it's really important that if you're in a moment and you're like, I don't know what to do. What do I do right now? If that's where you're at, when you don't know what else to do, self-care, okay? Take care of yourself. If you're in the moment and you have to choose between that person and you, pick you. Pick you. Pick your well-being, pick your health, pick your sanity over anybody else. That is so, so important. So, it's really important to recognize too that when you're opting out of these kinds of situations with narcissists and the Christmas and the holiday season, this isn't a withdrawal. It's not a defeat and it's not giving up. In essence, what it is self-control and directed focus. It's self-control not to let them provoke a reaction from you. It's self-control not to get hooked into the drama fest. It's self-control not to feed that, not to sympathize with it, not to enable it. It's self-control to not lose control of yourself in the moment. Directed focus is when you direct your focus to what you want, to what makes you happy, to what brings you peace, to what makes you feel good and alive and joyful. Because if there's anything that this time of year I believe represents is joy. That's what this time of year is about for me. And anything standing between me and that joy is a no. It's just a no. It's an opt-out, no thank you. I'm going to direct my focus to something that actually makes me happy. So, it's really important to examine your belief systems. And this is really heavy when you're talking about familial narcissistic patterns, where these familial belief systems are passed down. And in the group, it becomes that group think mentality. It's like a mobbing situation if you're the only one. The analogy of the crabs in a pot, right? The crabs that are going to be cooked in the pot. And the first crab that tries to get out, the other crabs will pull it back in. So if you're that person in your family breaking free, if you're the one standing up, speaking up and saying the silence ends right now, this abuse ends with me, I'm ending this legacy of abuse, you're that crab trying to get out of the pot, and others will try to pull you down back in there. So be aware that that's what's going to happen. But also be aware that you are responsible for your reality. And your perspective determines your reality. And your perspective is determined by your belief systems. And perhaps many of the belief systems that you currently hold don't reflect the values that you inherently have. They might be belief systems that were passed down in your family. And you're like, man, I don't even believe in that. I don't want to subscribe to that anymore. No, thank you. So this is an awesome time of year if you find yourself in one of these situations and it's really challenging. Examine your belief systems and examine how maybe some of those old belief systems are not really your belief systems. Maybe you no longer want to believe those things. You have a different perspective of reality. It's okay that everybody else has a different belief system. That's fine, that's their own, but you don't have to subscribe to that, even if you're the only one and there's a whole room of people that have that other belief system. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't mean they get to convince you that you have to agree with them, and it doesn't mean that you have to convince them to agree with you either. In the denial, right? The denial that's so heavy in the family belief systems and the familial legacy of abuse dynamics. It's really, really challenging when you're dealing with that denial, when you're trying to override it. The denial is like living in a false reality. And it's like a house of cards, right? And at a certain point, that house of cards is going to fall down. At a certain point, the truth is going to pierce that denial and everything falls apart. It's like in the movie Inception, when the girl, I can't remember her name, she's trying out the technology for like the first time. I think they're in maybe Paris or somewhere in Europe. And all of a sudden she becomes aware that she's dreaming, right? She awakens from the dream and things start imploding and exploding all around her. The reality starts falling apart of this dream. It's kind of like that when you're in these old belief systems, the familial dynamics of abuse, and you watch that old reality crumble. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. You could be sitting there at the dinner table and you're watching different people talking, and suddenly you have the oh my God moment, the aha moment, where you just see it so clearly, and all those denial filters start breaking down. And of course it's uncomfortable, you know, in the short term, but inevitably it's the truth that sets you free. And a lot of times what we find is that denial is sort of our way of, you know, creating a short-term sense of peace and comfort, but it leads to long-term discomfort and suffering. Whereas the truth leads to short-term discomfort, because when you confront people with the truth that they don't want to see, or even when you're confronted with truth that you didn't want to see, it's very uncomfortable, but that's what will lead you to long-term peace. It's important to keep that in mind. And it's just the most powerful thing here is just to take the reins of your destiny in your hands. Don't let other people tell you how it has to be. Don't let other people tell you what's real. Don't let other people tell you what you have to believe in, who you have to be, what you have to think, how you have to feel, what your perception of reality should be. Enough of that. Enough of that. You get to decide that by taking the reins of your destiny in your hands. And, you know, I want to tell you too that if you're already kind of coming to these realizations about the familial dynamics and whatnot, and you're just deciding that's not for me, I just don't want to go back into that anymore, create your own special holiday rituals. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And you can do this alone. There's nothing wrong with spending the holidays alone. You can do this with your new familia. Like maybe you have a group of friends and kindred spirits and you guys think alike and feel alike, and you have a similar idea of what is mutual respect and love and support, and you're there to inspire each other and to lift each other up. And these are people who understand that a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not, you know, I have to put you down so I can be up. It's that the tide rises and we all rise, right? Like maybe you know people like that and you share, you know, common things, and you want to create your new holidays together. Why not? Maybe you just want to be alone. Maybe you like to put on pajamas and watch Netflix and snuggle with your dog and drink eggnog or tea or whatever, and just enjoy the peace, the tranquility, and the joy of this time of year. So the trivia question that I have right now, those of you who have been in relationships with narcissists, those of you who still might have these people to some degree around you, you're probably getting hoovered a lot this time of year. It really steps up around the holidays, maybe just because the holidays makes narcissists feel so uncomfortable. But so what you're going to end up getting is a lot of hoovering. What is the most common form of hoovering? This is my trivia question right now. The first answer that I see here, that's the answer I believe is the most common hooverings. I hear this, I see it in my own life, I hear it from so many other people. I'm going to give away a personal email support in 2017 from me. You can use it anytime. I'll send it to you right away. I'll send you a private message through Facebook. I'm looking in the chat here. The most common hoovering message that people get from the narcissist during the holidays. Sorry, that one's up there. It's up there. It's not the most common one, believe it or not. Yeah, oftentimes, you know, they'll come with the fake apology, like, you know, sorry. It's like sorry but not sorry. Yeah, that's pretty common form of hoovering. It's still not the main one. There you go. I'm not going to say your name out loud just because I want to preserve your anonymity, because I'm going to load this on YouTube as well. But someone typed it here. I miss you. I miss you. It's the most common one. And this comes in many different forms. Sometimes it comes alone. I miss you, and that's it. There's nothing more. You haven't heard from the person like a long time, and then all of a sudden I miss you. That's so odd, right? Sometimes I miss you as a sandwich. I miss you, blah, 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 all this covert aggressive language, you know, like the very subtle ways that they're, you know, guilt tripping and things like that. And then at the end, I miss you, right? It's like a sandwich of I miss you. And sometimes it's I miss you and then putting you down, and then but I miss you and I'm sorry that we're not in contact, and then something else like some form of guilt tripping. And it kind of goes like this. It's up and down in the message, you know, where they're like trying to pull you in, and then they're trying to make you insecure with some kind of covert put down. Very, very common. What are someone else wrote, I love you. Yeah, that's also common, you know, because during this time of year, you might be thinking, like, they might even know that you're alone, that you came from a family with these dynamics, you don't want to be with your family. So if they tell you that they love you, then they might be able to hook you back. Someone else wrote, I want to hate you, but I love you. Yeah, that's tough. That's kind of like the borderline thing where it's both of them at the same time. Yeah, very common. Someone else wrote, it was your fault. You don't have your family. Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's really tough when they blame you for the family. Very interesting. Let me see what else is up here. Oh, someone asked for the translation in Spanish. I'm sorry, I don't have those capabilities right now. Believe it or not, it's really expensive. I've tried the closed captions on YouTube. They're free, but they're horrible. Like, they're not really good. I don't think they're really, really helpful. I had a couple people who are deaf ask me if I could put closed captions in English. I've had several people ask me if I can put subtitles in Spanish on a lot of my stuff, and it's like $7.50 a minute. It adds up really, really fast. So that's why I haven't done that yet. I would really love to be able to do that. Someone said, I was divorced in May and my ex-husband is getting remarried next week. Unreal, right? Unreal. That's like, what, 7 months ago? Oh, and getting married in the holidays too. That's awesome. That's awesome because it's the first holiday, right? Without the marriage, without that person. So yeah, he probably knows that's really hard. Someone else says, I'm trying to find me. I'm lost. It's hard. Yeah, this is the time of year when these kinds of things really come up, you know, like it's been so hard, you know, recovering after the abuse, and you lose your sense of self. You know, and then maybe during the holidays you find yourself alone, and maybe you're not prepared to be alone. Maybe you really, really want to be around other people. But if that's the case, and if you don't have anyone to hang out with, this is really an invitation from the cosmos for you to find yourself, for you to create your own holiday ritual alone. Like I mentioned, you know, just something that makes you feel good, scented candles and making delicious, healthy foods and snuggling with your dog and pajamas and whatever you really enjoy. This is your time. It's time to find you. You don't have to live the holidays for anyone else. You don't have to do what your family wants. You don't have to play along with that. You don't have to do what your ex wanted. You know, you don't have to deal with, you know how the narcissist is around holidays, right? They always have to create extra drama, extra tension, make everybody upset, and they end up essentially ruining the day. And the reality is that, yes, on one level, they're ruining the day, but on another level, like, you don't have bad days. You let those days go bad, right? It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to take the reins of our destiny in our hands. When we don't like the reality, you have to change it. And maybe you can't change that particular reality because it's the family dysfunctional dynamics. You can't change that. So what can you do? You can leave that reality. You can go create your own reality somewhere else, right? And that's what a lot of us end up doing this time of year. So I'm sending you a big hug. I know it's very, very tough. What else? Awesome. Someone said, love your videos. I'm so glad they're helpful. Someone else said, yeah, another common Hoover, I have changed. Oh, I really have changed. Losing you has made me realize how much I miss you. Yeah, they love to do that around the holidays, right? I've changed. I've seen the light. I'm really a different person. You know what's so funny is when you don't answer that Hoover, like, because you know how the first Hoover usually comes in some form of that. If it's not just I miss you, it's some form of that. And it's meant to soften you and to get you to go back. So if you don't fall for that one, what does the next attempt looks like? Well, it's usually something mean, something cruel, something nasty, right? Because if sweet didn't work, they go with mean. It's the sweet, mean cycle. So if you ignore that and you don't respond to that, like the next one that comes through is, and you're just blah, 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 and you blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you really love me, huh? You miss me so much and you changed so much. I can really see that. Yeah. Yeah, and it just confirms. It confirms any doubt that you had. It confirms who that person is. They have not changed, though they might say that, and they might sound really convincing. They might even have the alligator tears. I really have changed and I miss you, and I'm sorry for whatever I did that hurt you. Can we just get past it? They love to just get past it, right? Let's just shove it all under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen, and let's just go on, because that's how they do. Yeah, someone wrote, it's a nightmare. It can be, and that's why we can't subscribe to that, right? Because the nightmare is an invitation. We don't have to get involved there. We can unsubscribe from that and to not live in that nightmare anymore. And I realize those of you who are raising a child with a narcissist is significantly more difficult. That is a lifetime of boundary issues. I don't know what that's like. I don't have a child with a narcissist. I can only imagine what that's like, and it's not just till they're 18, because after they're 18, then maybe they go to college, and there's like college finances and funding and moving them in and taking them back on breaks and back and forth, and eventually there might be marriages or children or grad school or other big events, right? It's like there's always something. It's a lifetime of boundary lessons. It's very challenging, I can imagine. Someone says, I'm so happy I found you. I'm learning so much from you, lady. I'm glad. I'm really glad it's helpful. Someone else says he compares his new relationship, awesome, triangulation, to see how he learned from all the bad things he did so he doesn't repeat them with her. Somehow I deserved it. That's just fantastic. I mean, wow. Triangulation, daggers, unbelievable. Yeah. I'm sorry. Delicious, healthy food. Someone says, yeah, make your delicious, healthy food, because when you prepare healthy foods, like, it's amazing for your body. It's also amazing for your mind and your soul, because you're taking care of yourself. Like, you're realizing you're putting this energy into creating healthy foods, which you're ingesting. It's going to make you feel good on so many levels. Turn on some music and dance while you're cooking. It's so much fun. You can have a party of one. It doesn't have to be a big deal for the holidays. Right. So the person who said that the guy begged her not to divorce him, now it's her fault because his upcoming wedding is coming. And he says, I told you I didn't want the divorce. Oh, I didn't want the divorce, but watch me get married right now, 6-7 months later. Right. Poor boy, right? He just really, I'm the victim in the whole thing. I think they really do think that they're the victim most of the time. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. Okay, someone says, what is your advice for when toxic family members drive you off, but your absence hurts other loved ones? Like, they have driven a wedge between seeing other non-toxic family. Yeah, that's really common. The wedge, we call that, right? The wedge. I think that's a football term. But it's what the narcissist will do. Often the psychopath is the most brilliant at this wedge. They come into your life and they insert themselves in between you and everyone who's important to you, everyone that you really love, and they start to manipulate both and all sides of the situation, and it's so challenging. That's really tough when you're talking about the other person who maybe is not a toxic person, but they just don't see what's happening, and inadvertently they could be enabling the abuse. And enabling could be as simple as they're buying it. Like, maybe it's really covert, it's not really obvious. Like, Donald Trump is so obvious, right? But then there's other forms which aren't nearly that obvious. Any of you who have been with a covert narcissist or a sociopath know how sick that is, how covert it is, how hard it is to prove the abuse, because the person maintains this plausible deniability of, I didn't mean it that way. That's not what happened. You're just jealous. You're just hypersensitive. You're just paranoid. You're whatever. What's my advice for dealing with that situation when the wedge comes in like that is take a big step back, because that's going to reveal who's really with you. because maybe that other person is not toxic, but they are so unhealthy as a codependent. Maybe they are so dependent on that abuser, that they can't say no. Maybe they're financially dependent on the abuser. Maybe they're dependent on that abuser for help with their children or help with their dogs or something, right? There's some kind of dependency there. Maybe it's even an emotional dependency. Like they're that dependent on that person that they will defend them. Even though they're not a narcissist, they're not a toxic person, but it could be that a codependent is so unhealthy, so dependent that they will defend the abuser. And you really want to take a step back. Don't try to save that person. Don't try to convince that person. That person doesn't want to see it. Okay, they're either going to notice, whoa, you stepped back. What's going on here? And they're either going to come to you and ask what's going on and try to work things out, or they're not. I've seen this in family situations where people defend the abuser because either they just don't see it or they just don't want to see it because they're so helplessly dependent on that person. And it's very sad when that sort of dynamic happens because you love the other person so much. But it's this kind of similar situation when it's friendships, where somebody's still friends with your ex or whomever, maybe it was at work, your coworker, your boss, whomever the narcissist was. Could be that somebody else that you really loved is still, with them and sympathizing with them and defending them. They're just as dangerous. You can pretty much consider them a flying monkey at that point. And it's really better to take a step back. Maybe they'll come out of it. Maybe they'll realize what's going on and they'll set a boundary and they'll go to you and they'll start talking about it and you guys will be able to reconnect. Maybe that won't take place for a while. Sometimes it can take a long time. Sometimes it just never happens because that person is so dependent. So, have compassion for that person. Recognize it's not always to hurt you. A flying monkey isn't always vengeful and conscious of what they're doing. Sometimes a flying monkey is unconscious of what they're doing. They don't mean to sympathize with the abuser. It just happened, that they believed what was going on. They really believed the facade, the image, the show, and or they're totally dependent. Someone else said sharing kids is a nightmare. First Christmas, you won't have them. It's killing me. I'm so sorry. That must be really hard, to have to be away from your kids. And on top of that, know that they're with this really toxic person and that you don't get to spend that time with them. I'm really sorry. Big, big hug to you guys. Someone says, this is a Hoovering message, I think. I got told I love you. 2 weeks later, he said, just die. Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah, for sure. Because if you didn't respond to the sweetness, like I was saying, if you don't respond to the sweetness, then they come with the mean. And sometimes it's really, really cruel. If you let it go long enough, if you ignore that long enough, the person's true colors will come out, because the toxic person will keep imposing and imposing and imposing, and they'll keep escalating either the language or the abuse, and again, it could be really overt and obvious and in your face, or it could be really covert. And these double entendres and the plausible deniability, those are the trickiest ones. Those are the ones that make you doubt yourself the most. But when you get that icky feeling, when you just know, listen to that feeling. What else can I say to my daughter whose heart is shredded? She's really struggling bad. She feels hopeless in every way. I'm so sorry. I would love her as much as you can. I would listen to her, what she's saying. I would validate her feelings. I would, be there, show her that you love her, hug her, hold her, just show her that physical contact. She's safe. She can talk to you about anything. She could express her feelings and get her some help. If you guys have kids and you see, you have kids with a toxic person, like a narcissist, psychopath, whatever, and you really see that your kids are struggling, find a professional who deals with children who have been abused. Like, make sure you screen the person. You don't want them putting, disempowering and victim shaming sorts of ideas onto the kid and invalidating their perceptions of reality. That's only going to exacerbate what the narcissist is doing. Make sure you screen the person on the phone. Do they have experience working with children who have been abused? Do they understand what narcissistic abuse is, what psychological abuse is, what covert manipulation is? Do they understand, PTSD? Because most likely your children will have CPTSD, which is a complex form of PTSD that you develop when you're in an ongoing stressful situation, versus the PTSD, which is typically like a one-off situation, a sudden trauma, a rape, something of this nature, war, something that happened suddenly. Sometimes, in war, it's ongoing, right? Just like a relationship, it's ongoing. It's not just one thing, it's all these things. And get her help, get your kids help, get yourself help. If you find right now during the holidays, all that familial baggage is really coming up and you're really struggling with that, get yourself into therapy. Again, interview the therapist, call around, ask around, and interview and find out if they have experience with abuse, with psychological abuse, with narcissistic abuse. Do they understand what these things are? Do they know what gaslighting is? Like, can they really help you? And then get yourself involved there, to help yourself face the wounds that you have from childhood, so you can heal that and move forward in your life and not keep attracting that in new people. And if you're a parent, the more that you take care of yourself, the more help you get yourself, the more you can help your kids. You become like the lighthouse that shines and leads them out of the dark. You can be that beacon of hope and faith and healing for the future, but you have to lead the way. Lead by example. All right, I'm going to read a few more of these and then I'm going to sign off. Let's see here. Someone says, thank you, you're welcome. Someone says, Meredith, any ideas for the holidays on how to focus on forgiving yourself more? Great question. I know it's not about him and I don't want to be with the narc anymore, but it's hard to not look back at my choices in the past and feeling guilt over it still, especially when I bailed him out of jail last Christmas, right? So the memories are coming up. So the self-forgiveness, right? Like, there's two aspects of forgiveness. There's the forgiveness of the other people who have transgressed against us, and then there's the ones that we have done to ourselves, right? Those are the hardest ones, when we have to forgive ourselves for staying, for enabling, for bailing them out, right? In this case, it's literally bailing him out of jail, but bailing him out is just symbolic of what we all do, right? Bailing them out of whatever and going along with it and enabling it. So what I recommend, the forgiveness practice that I do, is when that stuff is coming up and, I'm self-defeating and I'm self-doubting and I'm self-blaming and I'm putting myself down, I just try to look at the bigger picture and recognize, like, I did the best I could at the moment. I did, and why did you do that? Because you loved him. You bailed him out because you loved him. And there's nothing wrong with loving a person. It's just that you recognize now you need to have new boundaries around your love moving forward. And one thing that I like to do to empower myself from these sorts of things where I need to forgive myself, because before you forgive yourself, you're kind of in this disempowered state, right? So in order to empower myself, every time those flashbacks, those negative feelings and thoughts, why did I not allow it? Why did I this? Why did I that? Okay, that was the past. I can't change that. What can I do now? What's one thing I can do now to feel better about that? Maybe there's something you can actually do. Maybe the best thing you can do is just to imagine that if that were to happen again, you would absolutely say no. You would draw the line, you would set the boundary, you would say no. So that you know that moving forward, you're never going to repeat that. I think a big part of when we can't forgive ourselves is when we don't fully trust ourselves that we're not going to do it again, right? So being really clear about who you are now and how much you've learned over this last year. You're not the person you were a year ago when you were bailing him out at Christmas. You've learned a lot. You've learned to set boundaries. You've learned to honor your own feelings. You've learned to meet your own needs. You've learned to start to say no to someone else when you have to say yes to yourself. So, you know, the whole what you imagine and what you remember, your subconscious actually believes is happening right now. Can't tell the difference between what's quote unquote really happening and what you're imagining and remembering. So if the way that you're imagining and remembering it is this disempowered, regretful, bitter sort of, you know, memory, then it's just perpetuating that. But if you shift the perspective into the empowerment, into, okay, I know much better than that now. If that were happening again, I would not make that decision. I would make this decision again. And practice running that through your imagination. What would it feel like if I make that decision now? You know, what would it look like? What would it sound like? How would I feel? That's what you want to focus on and keep creating that, because that's going to empower you. It's going to give you a sense of you have power and control. You're not helpless. You're not powerless. You can do something about it. You can't change the past. You can only change the way you look at it now and the actions that you take moving forward. That's how I would set myself off of that hook. That's how I would practice the self-forgiveness, you know, and just keep reminding yourself you did the best you could. You did the best you could with the resources you had at the time. And you're not the same person anymore. You've grown a lot now. A lot. Someone says love should be free. We were certainly not free as your thoughts were theirs. Right. But now it's on us to take those reins of control over our destiny and know that we are free, and set ourselves free with the truth, and set ourselves free to stop repeating those old dysfunctional patterns, the ones that were taught to us, the ones that were conditioned to us. It's up to us to change the game now. It's up to us to create the life that we actually want to live. So I am sending you all a big hug, so much love for this holiday season. I hope you have a wonderful time, and I will be doing another video before New Year's. I'm going to take the next 2 Mondays off of the Q&As during these holidays. It's the 26th and I think it's the 2nd. I'm going to take this time for some self-care, for finishing up the new training course that I'm working on, for creating some new plans for 2017. And I am looking forward to sharing all of that to you all after the new year. But again, I will be doing at least one more video before the end of the year. So big, big hugs to you all. Happy holidays.